everyone, how's it going? So the holidays are coming, and the first in the lineup here in the United States, that is Thanksgiving. So I wanted to give you a recipe for a dish that you could use as a main dish in your Thanksgiving spread or even in your other holiday spreads. So this particular recipe it's a stuffed acorn squash. And what is it stuffed with? It's stuffed with, I'm going to show you how to make a delicious Italian sausage crumble. No, I'm not using real sausage, and I'm not using a store-bought, commercially made artificial meat sausage. I'm going to show you how to make a delicious, flavorful Italian sausage I'm going to use pomfu, which is a pumpkin-based tofu that we have here in the United States. You can also use regular tofu. If you do, I suggest extra firm. You may also be able to use, there's the fava bean tofu by Big Mountain. So in addition to the Italian Italian sausage crumble that is going to be in the stuffed squash, there's also sauteed mushrooms, onions, there's some garlic, and then the traditional holiday herbs like sage and some thyme. And that pairs nicely with, then added to that to give some sweetness, is the actual baked squash, which is kind of pureed or mashed together with the other items. But in addition, there is on top a grated Parmesan cheese, and that's mixed in as well. And then additional sweetness is added by a sauteed apple. I will be showing you in the future some recipes for making other main holiday dishes. I am going to try to work on a gluten-free seitan based turkey roast. And I won't be using seitan because this is all a gluten-free and vegan channel. And those of us who are gluten-free, we can't have seitan that the regular vegans can have. Anyway, be on the lookout for that in the future. But I have a recipe and a video related to a turkey roast that I made out of soy. I made that video last year, and I'll leave a link to that video in this video's description. But anyway, on to this recipe. This is going to be, like I said, you could use it as a main dish in lieu of, a roast. Or if you have a huge holiday spread, you can serve this as one of the side dishes. It is quite filling. And if you are a household, like my household has always been, a combination of special diets, those who need a gluten-free and who want a vegan meal, they're going to love this particular dish. And I promise you that you're going to love this as well as will your meat-eating guests. And when I say promise, I know that's a pretty tall order to fulfill. So maybe some of those picky eaters who don't like mushrooms, who don't like mushy things, they may not like it. And if they're too critical to not try something vegan, maybe they won't like it. But I think for you vegans and those who are gluten-free, I'm pretty sure you're going to like it. I love it. But you let me know in the comments if you make it and what you think. Oh, and another thing I forgot to mention, this particular recipe is good for 4 servings. It has 2 acorn squash, each cut in half. That equals 4 servings. If you want to make more, obviously you can double it or triple it if you have a huge crowd. The other thing I wanted to say is, if 4 is too big for you or too much for you, as it is for me, since I'm the only one who's going to eat this in my family, what I'm going to do is take each of these and then freeze them. And you can do this too if you're planning to serve it for the holidays. You can mix up the filling, put the cheese in, and then freeze them. Don't bake the squash, just freeze them. And then you can thaw them the day before you're going to serve them. I would just thaw them in the refrigerator. And then you can top them with the grated Parmesan cheese and then bake them in the oven. So it's like a meal prep, but you can plan in advance for your holiday meal. Or If you are like me, who you're the single one going to eat this in the household, then just make the batch and freeze the others for later. So let's get on to me showing you how to make this particular stuffed squash. I'm going to start by showing you how to make the Italian sausage crumble. Start by placing 1 tablespoon of tomato paste in a medium-sized bowl. Then add 1 tablespoon of olive oil. Then 1 tablespoon of tamari or gluten-free soy sauce or coconut aminos. 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar. 1 teaspoon of maple syrup. About 1½ teaspoons of smoked paprika. And then 1 teaspoon of fennel seeds that you want to finely crush. Then 1 teaspoon each of garlic powder and onion powder. About 1/2 teaspoon of crushed red pepper. If you don't want the heat, just skip this. 1/2 teaspoon of dried basil. 1/2 teaspoon of dried oregano. About 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper. And about 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Then I mixed all these together to make sure that I had a smooth sauce. This is actually going to serve as a marinade for the pomfu tofu. So this is the pumpkin tofu called pomfu, and it's fairly dry and it's in a plastic sealed pack. What I did was I took it out and then I just dried it off on the exterior. I then started crumbling the pomfu into the marinade, and I tried to make fairly small crumbles. I was trying to simulate what Italian sausage is like after it's sautéed. I then gave everything a stir to make sure that all of the crumbles were coated in the marinade. I then poured the crumbles onto a parchment-lined baking tray with the intentions of baking them in the oven. But guess what? I learned that my oven, both top and bottom, was broken. It wouldn't turn on. No heat. If you bake them, do it at about 400 degrees Fahrenheit and maybe for 30 minutes, and then stir them occasionally to make sure that they're browning nicely and don't burn. Given my predicament, I put the crumbles in my air fryer, and then I cooked them at 390 degrees Fahrenheit for about 10 minutes and stirred them halfway through. You really have to keep an eye on them so they don't burn. To make the squash, you need 2 medium acorn squashes. Cut these in half. Be careful when you're cutting them, they can be difficult to cut. Scoop out the seeds and the fibrous interior of the 4 squash halves. Line these on a parchment-lined baking tray and then rub the interior of all of these with a bit of olive oil and salt and pepper. Bake these on a lined baking tray in the oven, heated to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Bake them for about 40 minutes until fork tender. I had to use 2 toaster ovens because my ovens were broken. After the acorn squash cools slightly, you want to remove the interior of the squash and place the interior in a separate bowl. You want to leave about, 1/8 of an inch of a rim in the acorn squash because they're going to serve as your serving bowl for the stuffed squash. Place the squash interior aside while you work on the remaining ingredients. So for the other ingredients, you need about 1 small container of cremini mushrooms. We're going to chop these and they turn into, you're looking for at least a cup of cremini mushrooms. And then 1 small yellow onion and 2 cloves of garlic. I finely diced the mushrooms and I put those aside in a separate bowl. I then finely diced the yellow onion. I then used a large skillet and poured about 2 tablespoons of olive oil in it and warmed it up. I added the onions to the hot skillet, as well as the diced mushrooms. I stirred those together and allowed them to saute for about 3 minutes to become slightly soft. I then diced a Honeycrisp apple. I didn't remove the skin, but I just diced it into small pieces. Then I added the apples to the mushrooms and onions in the skillet, and then stirred everything together again. I added 2 cloves of diced garlic and stirred that into the other ingredients. I then added about a half a teaspoon of salt and about 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper, 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg, and about 1/8 teaspoon of allspice. I then took a few sprigs of fresh thyme and fresh sage, and then I finely diced those. I also then shredded about 1/3 cup of the Violife Parmesan cheese. If you want to skip this, you can skip it. Then to the pan with the vegetable and apple mixture, I poured 1 cup of previously cooked brown rice. I also added about 1.5 cups of the squash that I had mashed with a fork. I then gave everything a good stir again to make sure that the squash and the rice were well mixed with the other ingredients. I also stirred in the chopped sage and thyme, as well as the crispy Italian sausage crumbles, and finally the grated Parmesan cheese. After everything was well combined, I took the halves of the acorn squash and I stuffed each of those with the combined sausage, vegetable, and rice mixture. And there was so much that I would press it down to make sure that there was a good amount within each of the acorn squash halves. I then grated each of the acorn squash halves with more grated cheese. I would say in total between the 4 of them about another half cup. I then baked the squash in a 400-degree oven for about 20 minutes to allow it to warm through and to allow the cheese to melt. So let's give this stuffed squash a taste test, and I'll let you know how it tastes and what the texture is like. So let's give this a taste test. As you can see, it's nicely topped with cheese, and then the fillings inside. I filled it to the top and kind of smashed it down so that I could fill each of these up as best as possible, and then topped it with the cheese and baked it. So let's give this a taste test. Let me show you what it looks like when it comes out. You can see that you're getting pieces of the sausage and the other items. So as far as flavor goes, it's a combination of definitely pronounced Italian flavors, meaning you can taste the fennel in the sausage. The sausage tastes like an Italian sausage, and it has that texture of a sausage. However, then there's a sweet layer from the mashed butternut squash, and I'm sorry, this is acorn squash. This smashed acorn squash, and then the apple. That the sweetness of those two also comes through. The cheese, it just adds a slight. Well, you know what Parmesan cheese tastes like? It's a slight tartness, which combines well with the other flavors. And honestly, I can taste, it's slightly heat. There's a slight heat here because of the red pepper as well, the red pepper flakes. You can also taste some of the herbs that I put in, like the sage. And in addition, I want to say that, it's an interesting combination of flavors, both traditional holiday Thanksgiving flavors combined with an Italian twist, I want to say. Texture-wise, it's a bit involved or complex. It's not, please don't think this is 100% like a mushy texture because of the squash. The squash is kind of like a background, if you will, as far as texture goes. And you get bits and pieces of sausage and apple bites, and then you can get the texture from the rice that's inside. I personally like the body that the rice adds. I could have probably added even a little more, but it's a nice texture and it's hearty and filling. I can imagine a whole theme around this as far as the dinner goes. You could start off with something really delicious like maybe a chestnut soup would be good. Having this as your main and then having some type of, maybe arugula salad and a nice toasted garlic bread with this. Or as I said, you could just push this off as a side with your other main items that you're going to have. But this certainly can shine as its main, as a main meal in and of itself. Hey, as always, thank you so much for joining and watching. If you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please share it with others. Let me know if you do make this. Let me know if you have any questions while you're making it. If there's any other videos that you would like me to make, let me know. Those obviously it has to be gluten-free and vegan. And yeah, I just enjoy hearing from you. If you want the recipe, as I have been doing lately, I'm going to leave my email in the description below and just email me and ask me for the recipe. And I'm pretty prompt at responding because I love hearing from you and I love responding. So anyway, thanks again. And check out these next videos. They're going to be other holiday-focused meals, and I have some on side dishes as well as stuffings. I'll leave that in the description below and in the next videos that you can see here at the end. Thanks so much.